aga kas praegu on ta töös muidu või? See on ülekande, aga ma tahan inimesi nüüd. Hello, good evening. You can all sit down, find your places where you feel comfortable, and we can start with this event. So, today we are opening exhibition, Voices of Violence, and we're going to have a discussion about the subject. But before the discussion, we would like to greet our hosts, who are Danish Culture Institute in Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, Crazy Tartu Festival, and of course Kogo Gallery. And my name is Piret Põlver, and usually I'm working on a literature field as a writer and an editor, but today I'm the moderator of this event. First, we're going to have the welcoming speeches. And the first speaker is Elina Sadauska, project coordinator at Danish Culture Institute in Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. Please.
Good evening. Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, dear guests, and thank you for coming here and also joining online. Voices of Violence exhibition has already been displayed last year in the 3 Baltic capitals, but I'm very happy to be here today in Tartu and opening it once again. We have been working with this project for quite a long time now, with a lot of great partners in all 3 Baltic states, also Denmark, Iceland and Belarus. And still this project is very relevant today, and because we tend to forget that gender-based violence happens around us, sometimes very close to us, and it is a very common problem in all the partner countries, even though at first sight they might seem so different. And we are here because we want to raise awareness and keep a constructive dialogue on these important issues that should be discussed and brought to light. And gender-based violence, especially domestic violence, unfortunately in the past 2.5 years of pandemic has experienced a rise once again, because people were staying at home more often than usual. And culture and art, I think, has this role, this special role, that it can create a space where we can reflect on these issues and talk about them across borders, and give a voice to people and topics that haven't been heard. Therefore, I really hope you will take the time to look at the exhibition and really listen to the very many different stories, which are heartbreaking, frustrating, but they are really, really important to be heard. And finally, I would like to thank everyone who was involved in making this project a reality, to all the brave actresses who were willing to give a voice to these anonymous stories, to the brave women who offered their stories, to the team who produced these very touching videos that you will hopefully look at, also the designers and producers who made this beautiful installation in the other room. And of course, it also wouldn't have been possible without our supporters, Agency for Culture and Palaces in Denmark, Knut Højgaards Fond, and Nordic Council of Ministers. And lastly, of course, I would also like to thank our partners Crazy Tartu Festival and Kogo Gallery for inviting us to be part of their programs, because this helps this project to live on and raise hopefully even more awareness. So thank you very much, and I hope we will have a good discussion.
Thank you. The next speaker is representative from Crazy Tartu, Maria.
Thank you. This cooperation between the festival and the Danish Cultural Institute in Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania has been quite a long one. We started out, I think it was in spring already, with this idea of bringing this exhibition to the festival. And quite immediately it seemed only natural to us to use this title of the exhibition as the main topic or the subtitle of this year's festival as well. Well, the Crazy Tartu Festival has always been an interdisciplinary festival, although it mainly focuses on writing, on poetry and prose. It has always integrated into its program art, music and other videos and other forms of art and storytelling. And for that, I'm really happy that this exhibition that brings together storytelling in a way and also a very crucial social issue has become part of this festival, festival program, and has also indeed inspired this year's Crazy Tartu to invite all its performers and guests to think about the forms and meaning of violence as such, even in a broader way. So I'm happy that this preliminary event or warm-up event in the form of this opening of the exhibition is also the introduction to our festival. And I'm very happy and grateful that our partners, both the Danish Cultural Institute and Kogo Gallery, have done such a great work to make this all happen here. So thank you very much.
And the third speaker is the representative from the Kogo Gallery, Nina Raus.
Hi, I'm very happy to greet you here in Kogo Gallery, where the exhibition takes place, and in our neighbor gallery, AG47 Gallery. This is quite a happy coincidence that this exhibition came to Kogo Gallery. We had a short gap between our exhibitions, and Siim made this proposal, and it very fit actually into our program. We already for 2 years have curated our exhibition under a kind of vibe. Like last year it was ecology, economy, and this year it is past is the present, and next year is queer it up. So our previous exhibition was titled Unfolding and Refolding, and it actually told also about body memory. And this exhibition is actually a very nice continuation of this last exhibition, because if you think how this violence actually is imprinted into our bodies and affects our present as well as our future. And it's, I think it's very important exhibition and topic. That's why we are very happy that it takes place in Kogo Gallery, and I hope that it helps to create better future. Thank you.
So soon we are going to watch 2 of the videos from the exhibition, but before that I will tell you a little more about the exhibition. This is a project on violence and sexism perpetrated against women. Voices of Violence will focus on the importance of spaces and platforms where women can voice their stories and experiences. This exhibition will consist of short videos where Nordic, Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian, and Belarusian women actors read real anonymous stories of sexism and sexual violence. This exhibition has traveled around 3 Baltic states, as well as Belarus, and it also is a good starting point for the Nordic literary artists and activists to discuss issues of gender, art, sexism, and sexual violence, which is what we do today. But before we go to the discussion part, we will watch 2 videos from the exhibition.
Oli kuum suvepäev. Ma olin sel päeval otsustanud lühikese selga panna. Olin 18-aastane ja ma sõitsin bussiga koju Tallinna äärelinna. Ma olen suutnud, et ma sõidan aastaid juba iga päev. Sellel liinil on üks selline miinus, et 3 peatust enne lõppu lähevad enamus inimesed maha ja siis on õhtuti hirmus. Aga see, mis ma praegu räägin, ei toimunud see õhtul, vaid keskpäeval, nii et mingisugust hirmu ei olnud nagu kõigest tunda. Tavaliselt, kui ma bussis olin, siis ma kuulasin oma telefonist muusikat ja lugesin uudiseid ja ma olin täiesti omas moodis ja täpselt samamoodi tol päeval. Ja see inimene, mis mu kõrval istus, ma ei vaadanud peaaegu kordagi tema poole. Aga ma tundsin, et ta nagu hakkab minu suunas nihkuma ja siis automaatselt ma hakkasin akna poole liikuma. Ja see tekitas sellist ebamugavat lähedust. Ja siis, kui ma jõudsin sellesse peatusesse, kus enamus inimesed maha läksid, siis ma tundsin soovi kätt.
We also have a third participant who will join us through joining online. Seam is reaching to her, but she's Christina Rosenthal, who is a film director. Christina is working in both feature films and documentary. Her latest feature documentary, Violently in Love, 2018, shares the stories of women behind the closed doors of the Copenhagen-based women's shelter. With the film, she managed to stir up so much political debate that emotional and mental abuse and violence is now considered a crime in Denmark alongside physical violence. Is she with us?
No.
People in online, they can hear me, as I understand. I have a... So before the discussion part, I inform first, the audience can also ask questions after the discussion, and people watching us on online can also ask questions. They can write it in Facebook. So,
But wasn't she supposed to join on Teams?
Google Teams, I guess you.
Okay.
No.
Maybe we can slowly start.
Okay. The first question is the introduction question to you all. The same question I asked it to Christina later on. So, could you please introduce or tell us a little more about yourself and your work, and from your own perspective, what are the most important topics in your work or art? So, Lisinga.
Yes, so as you said, I work as a writer and also as a journalist, and I think I investigate like gender equality, feminism, and those sort of themes in different ways. So I wrote a novel, and right now I'm writing a book about forgotten women in Danish culture. So it's nonfiction. And when I write journalism, it's also often like circulating around like equality and minorities and human rights and stuff like that.
And thank you,
Paula. Good evening to all. I'm Paula. I'm from Italy. I'm volunteer here in Kogo Gallery for this year until next September. I'm also project assistant for the project Creative Connections, that is part of the Tartu 2024 program. And I'm also a master student at the University of Trento in Italy and in art history. And I do think that last couple of years, I discovered what is the main focus of my research, that is talking about sexuality and how art can talk about it. So especially contemporary art. So yeah, sexuality mainly about gender, but also sexual orientations and non-conforming sex. Yeah.
Thank you. I also just wanted to say that I'm very happy to get this invitation.
So, sorry.
Well, I just wanted to thank for the invitation. It's I think it's like fantastic to be able to come here and get out of just like the Danish culture that I'm usually in and meet other cultures.
Thank you for coming. Yeah. See you. What do you think? Shall we continue the discussion, or?
You should.
But maybe Christina can hear us? No? Okay. But first question is to Inger. So I just asked the question, so we'll see what happens. You are both journalist and author. Do you feel these roles are as different? Do they go together well, or is there a tension between them in yourself? And is it easier to communicate your ideas to society as a journalist or as an author, and why?
I think, just to start in the middle of the question, I think it is sometimes easier, or like at least that's my experience, it's easier to communicate through fiction because I think that the readers are a bit more open and less judgmental when it comes to like fictional writing or watching movies or whatever it might be. Whereas journalism, it seems like you can be a bit more, I don't know, like paranoid maybe, like it's asking for them to be critical towards the topic, even though it can be like exactly the same. So in fiction, people tend to be more engaged in the narrative of the character, so you can get a more diverse conversation about the topics, I think.
So your topics are often similar, or what you want to say with your work, as I understand?
Well,
but the method is different.
Yeah, I guess I don't have, in writing, I don't have like one message I want to tell, but it's, gender is just a topic that can really turn people on in a bad way, and in a good way as well. And I think that people just get very provoked with journalism, and I don't, and less with like fiction and art, and I don't really know why. Maybe it's just because journalism, then you can just like comment something on Facebook. So I don't know if it's also because people just engage more when you have to read like a whole book than if you have to read just an article. But also if I've written like a long interview with someone, then I can see in the Facebook feed that people just like comment like shit about the case, which is heartbreaking. Yeah.
But it doesn't happen with the book often.
Not in the same way. And also the characters are fictional, so.
Thank you. Paula, your master's thesis is focusing on the crossroads of US photographer Catherine Opie. And one of the topics is gender binary system. Can you tell us more about your work, and what is the relationship between violence towards women and binary system?
So my work is based on part of the work of Catherine Opie. She's a photographer, she's from California, and she portrays her community, that is the queer community, mostly during 80s and 90s, and making these individual portraits of her friends, actually, of what was her family and her like kind of relatives in that period of time. And so in these years, like
The sound is
okay.
Is it better now?
I
don't know.
Okay. So in these years, USA was experiencing the AIDS plague, and the state was not doing anything, hasn't done anything for years about it. And the first steps to try to face this issue about this plague was actually have been made by the LGBT associations themselves during the first years. And the visual of media about AIDS was mostly focusing on the suffering of the people that had AIDS, or like conveys an image that was of not healthiness. I mean, so it was really like a suffering image, and people who were like suffering a lot, almost dying, and or something that was kind of pervert. And so what she does is to portray the queer community that was experiencing a huge loss with, for example, like these very colorful backgrounds in these photos, very bright, very colorful, and these people who are actually like gazing at you. So they are looking in the eyes of the person who is looking at the photo. And I found this connection with this exhibition actually, because the actors that are telling these stories about violence are looking to you in the eyes in the meanwhile. And so there was this like little connection with my master thesis that I found really interesting. And so this thing about taking the power to say your story, your experience, and also about violence. So in the work of Catherine Opie, for example, violence is not really overt. So it's you cannot really see it in a very like shocking way, for example, but it's there. Like it tells about that years, and it tells about like how to bear witness of that community. Yeah, so, and about the second question, that was this
relationship between violence towards women and binary system.
Yeah, so talking about it, so I would like to start about this concept of heteronormativity that have been created, defined by Michael Werner at the beginning of 90s. So heteronormativity is this concept of the society in which we live, all of us, that tells how heterosexuality is the norm, and it is considered normal, like natural even. And to have heterosexuality, you need a gender binary system. So there are two opposite poles. There is males and females, and these poles are considered kind of complementary. So they complement themselves, like. And this complementarity bring with itself these ideas of a natural separation between like males who are considered more dominant and more aggressive, and females who are considered more like submissive and more nurturing. Like, and so it's this thing about having these two opposite poles that brings with itself kind of a hierarchy. So kind of a power asymmetry between them that brings to discrimination. So this cis male-centered society in which we live is kind of something to think about and to kind of try to overcome, because we have this very like powerful social group that is like cis male, and then like above, not above, down, like, oh, don't remember the word in English, but yeah, so there is this dominancy, and then all of the other like gender roles are like marginalized. So I think that women identified people are like the most visible marginalized group, but it's not the only one. So this is the point of it. And so it's this power inequality, power asymmetry that brings to discrimination, that brings to violence, that have like many forms. So it can be harassment, but it can also be related to family loss, to people that are like put aside from the family just because the family doesn't accept a different gender than the traditional genders that the family knows. So yeah, so this is the point.
So how is with the video now? See, is it okay? Ma istun sinnapoole. Can Christina hear us now? So Christina, you're here now, but we can't hear her. So should we continue with the questions? Yeah, I leave all the questions that I would like to ask Christina for later. So, yeah. To Inger, I would like to ask, because it's your subject, we all know that it is much easier to recognize physical violence than emotional one, but there are so many similarities and more than one might expect. Could you elaborate the bloodlines between physical and emotional violence and how it all relates to patriarchy and sexism, and etc.? So this is one of things you're working with, as I understand.
Yeah. It definitely is.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's like all sort of gender-based violence is rooted in like very toxic patriarchal system where like there is this masculine idea that you have a right to own a woman. And as Paula just talked about, there is this binary where the man is supposed to be like active, have agency, like be aggressive, whereas the woman is like nurturing, the mother type, just be like a desirable object. And I think this is a and I'm not saying that all men are like this is like all men like
It's the system,
women, but it's like but
culture.
we have to acknowledge that that is something that exists as an idea in our culture. And I know like the past week 2 women have been killed in Denmark. One was 7 months pregnant and the other one was killed by her ex-husband, and he also killed their child, 11 months old. So this is like the extreme side of like gender-based violence. But if we don't talk more about the emotional violence that goes ahead, these stories will just be like horrific and tragic, and you can sit and be like, oh my God, how can this go so far? But ahead of these things, I think there's like so many years of emotional violence. I read recently that the most dangerous time in a woman's life is like 3 months after they leave their male partner. Which is insane that it is
That the statistics says that.
Yes. It was found the first time in the late 90s, but it's just been it is the same, like nothing has really happened. I do think there is a lot in conversation that has happened though after Me Too in 2017, and there's at least in Denmark there is a big discussion about emotional violence, and also after Christina's film, and it is talked a lot about and sort of like equal to physical violence, but again, it's hard to like go to court with emotional violence. So it is a very hard and very important topic that we have to talk more about, I think, in order to bring down like the physical violence.
Yeah. Do we have sound now? We had some whispering from your phone.
Yeah, I think you need to put the microphone closer to the moderator if I should be able to hear her. Yeah, thank you.
Now we hear you very well, and I think that maybe is it. Can you hear us better if you talk in the microphone?
It's much better now.
But we have an echo at the same time in the room.
Okay.
So, Siim, can you fix it? No? Oh, can you use headphones? Asks our technician.
I can try it. I'm trying for it. Is this better?
Can you hear us? Is it okay how you hear us, or it's still bad?
I guess this is the same, right?
It's okay, or should we change something?
I think I should better it now.
So what shall we do, Siim? Okay, I will use the microphone and can you, for the time I'm speaking, can you mute your own microphone? Because I think I hear my own voice from your computer. So, is it? Oh, it's not that. I think that you should mute in the Zoom your own microphone. Or is it? Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry for all this thing. Christina, I would like to ask you, your latest documentary titled Violent in Love changed quite many things in the society. It shares the stories of women behind the closed doors of the Copenhagen-based women's shelter. And as I said before, with the film, we managed to ignite so much political debate that alongside physical violence, emotional and mental abuse and violence is now considered a crime in Denmark. This is a quite big change. Please tell us more about the film and what actually happened when the film came out. What were the topics that surfaced thereafter for the public?
So now I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me without the echo?
Yeah.
Okay, so hello. It's great to be part of this. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, so let me tell you a little bit about the documentary. So I spent 5 years in shooting in a shelter for women who had been battered by their husbands, and shooting scenes with the women recovering and scenes of empowerment. And when the film was ready to be released in the cinemas, we discussed, how should we launch it? What was the purpose of the film?
And so we talked to a lot of the NGOs working with gender issues, women's rights, like UNICEF, Red Cross, Save the Children, all these organizations. And we asked them, you know, we have this film about violence. So what do you think is the biggest problem for you as organizations in creating change? And so what we learned from that process was that they were frustrated because the only type of violence that politicians and the media would accept would be physical violence. And since we know there are 5 different types of violence, so economical violence, material violence, sexual violence, physical violence, and then psychological violence also. And now we're also talking about digital violence, right? So that's 6 different types of violence. But the only one that was respected was the physical violence. And that was a big frustration because the psychological violence is actually much more common and also much harder to recover from. So what we decided was to use my film to launch a debate about psychological violence in the media, and also in order to educate the Danish population so that normal people would understand this concept and have some respect for the seriousness of the psychological violence, and teach the audience about the patterns of the psychological violence, so that they understand the concept much more. So, for example, I would go out in the media and talk about the different strategies of psychological violence, which could be that someone wants to isolate a person or degrade, like talk degrading about to a person, to a boyfriend, to a girlfriend, or it could also be controlling, like mobile phone dialogue with friends, you know, surveillance, also stalking and threatening. And that this is a pattern that takes time over, that takes place over time, so that people start to get an idea about this. What is the psychological violence? And then we decided to, as a goal for the film, we decided to try and work for a new paragraph in the Danish penal law that would criminalize psychological violence in itself, because right now, at that moment, the law would criminalize violence like as a general thing, but not psychological violence specifically. And I believe that in order to create change, we need to have some kind of method in order to make psychological violence stand out in itself. And so that's why we initiated this strategy to try to get this new law passed in Parliament. And so we hired a lobby strategist, publicist, a lady who made a strategy, and I can tell you what that was. Is, you know, when you send out a film, you will do a press material for all the media, telling a little bit about the story, about me as a director. And what we did was we created like this huge press material where we would have just a second, I have to find the words. So we would have all the facts about psychological violence, like how many people is this happening to? What are the international laws and conventions that Danish government signed off regarding violence and gender-based issues? What is a lot of data about psychological violence? And also, we would ask some questions to, so why do we need a new law regarding psychological violence? And then we would also give some answers to this question. And the idea was that we would do all the work that we knew that the media would not pay their journalists to do like the deeper sort of fact-finding research. We knew that that's not a priority in the media because violence is not a priority. So we would do all this work, and just give it to the journalists, and they could just sort of implement that in the radio programs, on television, in the newspapers, and on social media. So we would sort of do a package for the journalists, so they did not have to do the job. We had already done it, and we had also found some experts, and we have asked the expert, if the media calls you in order to have this debate, would you say yes to that? And then people would say, yes, I would like to do the debate, and we would put the phone number also in the press material. So that made it very easy for all the journalists just to have a lot of material just to launch in programs. And I think that helped a lot in order to create a momentum. And then the other thing we did was that I made a director's statement following the film that says that told the story about me, because I also grew up in a family with psychological but also physical violence. My father was an alcoholic and also extremely violent physically towards my mother, but of course psychologically towards us kids. And I would do a personal statement about that, and that also created like a lot of press interest. And so I would use this kind of tabloid interest in order to push the political agenda. Yeah. That was a long story.
Yeah, thank you. I'll place the microphone in front of us, so I don't know if you hear us or just wave if you need us to hold the microphone.
Paula, I would like to ask you, violence, especially sexual violence, is a taboo. What can be done to change this? Your subject is connected with that, so
Yeah, like so I think that in these two words, like so sexual violence, there are two taboos, so that are intertwined. So there is violence that is also kind of a taboo because it shows our fragility as human beings. So telling about violence is really like put yourself in the hands of the other person to who you are talking to, and so show your fragility. And the other taboo is about sexuality, so we are not used to talk about it. So I do think that maybe something helpful could be to just talk it in a more free way and in a non-erotical way, to just talk about sexuality with people, like in general, with friends, with family, at the school. And I do think that this could help a lot about talking about sexual violence also.
So breaking taboos, talking is something that helps, like
just also
like accepting those.
And for sure, yeah, sharing experiences for sure, and having these moments about talking with other people about it, and creating maybe some dedicated events, or but also like bringing up this topic in schools, I think, or in the family as well. Because it's something that regards the human being, that regards the body. So maybe there is also this separation between body and mind that is kind of still ongoing in our society. Definitely. Could be. So there is still this like kind of a shaming feeling about talking about the body in general, about how the body is, how the body gets old, and all about around that. Yeah.
So the roots are quite deep. In these problems.
So as before we continued our talk without Christina, so I'll ask the next question again to you about the documentary. Again, you made interviews with women who had experienced violence. Can you describe your experience about making the film and the power of sharing a story? And how did the women on screen use the film for their healing process?
So I think when I asked when I started out and invited the women into the film, it was very hard for them to say yes. I mean, they were very scared, of course, because of the taboo. And I think that those participating in the film said yes, also because I have the similar story. And also I told them that they could be in this, I mean, that they could be part of the documentary, but they could also pull out. I mean, so even if they had been filmed for 1 year, if they changed their minds, I would accept that. And I think that's a kind of that was the price I paid, like the risk I took. But I think it was very important for me that not to be like professional, but meeting them on a more kind of existential human level. And I also believe that in reality and life is much more important than making film. Like just overall, that's my set of values. But I think that what I did was I asked these women to tell me why they wanted to become part of the film. So I did not want to tell them why they should be part. I wanted them to tell me why they want to become part of the film. And so they came to me and said, I think it could help me break the taboo, and I want to share my story because I want to help other people, and I want to become a role model. You know, so I think there was an empowerment that they felt, even though that they were also very vulnerable. And I think we had maybe something that was a surprise to me was that when the film was launched in the cinemas, we discussed with them and also with the shelter, is it too vulnerable for these women to do interviews? I mean, would they be in life danger if they did that? And so we decided that some of them could do interviews, but anonymous. And instead, I would take that job doing a lot of the interviews, which I think was also to protect them. But I think that the problem for me then was that I felt that journalists, when they were interviewing me, that they were really tough and sort of very. I felt it was very brutal to be the one who was being interviewed, and I actually felt re-traumatized by not by being in the shelter for 5 years, but by meeting the journalists. And that was interesting. I had to go into SE trauma therapy while I was doing the press because it was just fucking insane, just the cynicism that and yeah. So I'm really glad that I did not throw these women in front of the wolves, but I had the capacity of getting like a psychiatrist and therapist helping me in this process. So yeah, that's how it was.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds really, really hard work that you're doing with your art. I would like to ask you, Inger, what do you think? How can art and literature make changes in the culture, and how they can enhance the discussion on such topics as we're talking here? What is the power of art in like a very cliche question in a way?
Well, I don't want to sound naive, but because I don't think art in itself can change the world but it can definitely contribute to it. And I think Christina's example with the film is very it's such a good example that we have this film, but then there is this whole thing around it, press material and a lot of pressure to create a momentum. But I think what we can do as writers or film directors or whatever we do, we can like focus on like challenge the stories, like the stereotypical stories, and like give voices to new stories and contribute to like push other stories forward, and like break the representations that we know about the passive woman who like and like that women can have no agency and all these things. Like I wrote my master thesis on representations on sleep in art, which is like something completely different. But then I studied like the art history's representation of sleep, and it's all like go to like some national gallery and watch these paintings. It's like women like this, sleeping, while a man is like looking at her, staring at her while she's sleeping. And it's beautiful paintings, there's no doubt about it. But it's this story all over again, and it's just like validating the ideas that we already have about like the passive, naked sleeping woman and like the acting male. And it's just, we need to break this gender binary in some ways at some point. There is a lot of stuff going on already, but I think art can really contribute to it, because it can like maneuver around spaces that have no other places. And
have you gotten any feedback on your work also, that you have felt that it has changed something, or even few persons?
Yes, I did receive it, because in my novel I work a lot of with sexuality and like the borders of friendship, and where does a friendship like go from like friendship to like a romantic relationship, and like these really strict relations that we have, like you can't have sex with your friend, because then you like, what are you dating, and stuff like that. And I got a lot of messages from people who like recognize themselves in these like blurred lines between different relations. And it's not always a problem, but it's only a problem because we categorize the relations so strictly. So yeah, I got a lot of feedback on that, and also just like the blurred lines about like the experience you can have yourself. Like you can have a sexual like experience, and then years later you can suddenly be in doubt if like, was that actually like abuse, and these sorts of things. It's much easier to work with it in art, because in journalism or at least that's what I work with. Otherwise, you have to have an answer, so you can't be like in doubt, like what happened. You have to be like push like a message forward. So I think art has a really big potential in these areas, but can't do it alone. There needs to be like support from like society, and yeah.
Society has to be ready.
Yes, exactly.
For those issues.
Now I have a wider question, which is for all of you, but maybe I would direct it to Christina first, because you are a spokesperson of women's rights and gender equality, not only in the films, but you're also a chair of the board at Danish Film Directors Association. So similar discussion as here were held in Vilnius, also in Riga, and in Vilnius, one participant was also a Danish artist, Emma Holten. And she told that when she experienced sexual violence, she was in the beginning of her 20s. She felt being completely alone. And what made her feeling alone was that the impression that Danish culture had overcome sexism, and she must have been the only one who still experiencing something like that. So she didn't feel that she could talk to anyone because in the society there was an impression that it's very equal and we don't have these problems anymore. So I'm wondering, is this something that is common in Denmark or in Scandinavian countries, which we consider so the human rights are there in a better level than maybe in Estonia or Belarus? So, but is this some like paradoxically they are considered so equal that it actually makes worse to experience something like that?
Yeah, I think we have a big problem in Danish culture because we have all these kind of truths that we tell each other about, that we are the most happy country in the world, the most safe, one of the most safe countries in the world. We have equality between men and women, and I can just see that when you're looking at the numbers, how the differences in how many men and women are being paid for the same job, the amount of women heading companies or big kind of boards in associations and all this, we totally have a problem. But we are just in denial about the problem. And so I think we if I should just shame Danish debate culture, I think that we're all, I mean, people are always talking about the formal, what does the law say, and then ignoring all the facts about, what's happening in society. And so people always refer to that we have the legislation that is equalizing people, but and then ignoring, facts. And this is why I think that Me Too movement has been just, so powerful and important for us all, because I think that if we want to change something, we have to use mass media. And I think that I've been chair of the board at the Danish Union for Directors. I just stopped in May this year, but I've been there for 8 years. And I've been very, very sort of dedicated to using that position of power that I've had, and also using that to create a platform in the media to talk about these things, because it's fucked up also in Denmark. I must tell you, and it's also fucked up in the higher social layers of society. It's just, I really feel really frustrated about this thing in Denmark. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was actually very surprised when I heard the fact that it's like this. So, Inger, your impression from the Danish society, do you agree or?
There's definitely this problem that in the discussions about gender equality, people will just be like, oh, but the law says we have equality, so, and it's and then the debate sort of just ends. And if you would continue, like, insist on different things, you'd just be called a witch or something like that. But it's really, it's not very productive. And every year you can see, like, I guess Denmark used to be like pretty much in the top of like gender equality, and I don't know where we are right now, but I know that we're getting worse and worse and worse, because we have this idea that we have it already, so we are not doing anything about it anymore. But we have so many problems still.
But this is something that should be talked about all the time and not forget the issue as it is.
Yeah, and I see, like, in the elections, like the ministries they put together after that, it's always like gender equality and fishing and something else, like, put together. Like, it's not taken seriously at all. And like, we just had elections while these 2 women got killed, and it gets no attention, like, in a political structural way. And it's just it's a huge problem.
Paula, can you comment on Italy? How is it there? Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I cannot actually compare. Like, I don't know the situation here. I don't know the situation in Denmark. I just know the situation in Italy. So I cannot say like anything about that. Like, what I can say is that if we talk about gender inequality, maybe we should think about what we mean as gender and what we mean as inequality. Like, I mean, so if we still be stuck in this polarization, it's kind of a fight between two poles. So yeah, so in my opinion, it's just have to like go like to overcome this thing, because otherwise it's gonna be a fight. That's it. So. But yeah, about violence in general, that this is something that I can comment on, and also like what we think what violence is, because violence is also like a non-acceptance of the autodetermination of the other person. So this is also violence. So every time that we don't accept like the gender or the sexual orientation or anything else about the person that we are talking to, that is violence. That is violence. So it's not something so far from us and from our daily lives and from ourselves. Like, it's something that we can actually contribute a lot for not accepting the autodetermination of the other person. So in Italy, for example, what I can say is that there is this huge issue about abortion, a lot, that so it's really like a problem, and it's getting worse also because of the last elections that the far right won. So we have this law about abortion that actually is already not enforced, because we have this little thing written there that if the doctor is contrary, like it doesn't think that they can do this surgery, like this practical thing. So if they're against the law in practical, they can just not do that. Say no. Yes. So it's really blurry, but a matter of fact is that we have a huge percentage of doctors who are against this law, so they don't do abortions at all. So, and it's also like, getting worse about it. So, and this is also violence, because it's deciding about another body of another person. That is not something that has to concern me, like this matter of decision.
Can you comment on this, that me and maybe some other people in our culture have this impression that in Mediterranean countries, like in Italy, there is this kind of matriarchy, that women have more power and self-confidence than maybe in the Nordic countries. I don't know if you have heard this.
Okay, in
like maybe also in Spain, that there are like strong women.
Okay,
is it something new for you?
It's really new, because from the perspective of Italians, I can talk just because, like, just of Italians, is the opposite way. So we see like
no matriarchy.
No, we see something like that in the Nordic countries. Like we see like powerful people who identify as women. So it's really like totally the opposite way. Yeah, it's I'm really surprised about it. Yeah, because we kind of thought the opposite way. Yeah, so probably no empowering of anybody, like nowhere.
But you also said something that what you think is violence. Can you, Inger, also comment? But would you consider what is violence in general? Like, I don't know, even philosophy.
I don't know. It's hard to, because in one way I agree with Paula that that violence can just be like not acknowledging or like not accepting like another, but that's like the philosophical like discussion. But then there's also like the more I don't know, like practical discussion where I think it can be dangerous to like say that if violence can be like everything, then what is violence, and then how do we deal with it in the law? But I think, but those two, it's like different discussions. So I don't really know, because like in a way I just agree with
You should turn into a philosopher. I hope you, Christina, heard the discussion. So do you have any comments or thoughts? What is violence?
You know, I think that I think what has been useful for myself, I've been in part of a big work in the Danish film industry regarding diversity, but also harassment. You know, how can we go to work and not being harassed? And in that process, I felt it was very giving to sort of learn about psychological mechanisms. And one of the things that I felt was important to remember is that, you know, when two people interact and have a relationship like mother, child, lovers, grandparents, you know, and their children or friends, or I think that we take on the position of a violator or a victim, everybody shifting in and out of this position through our lives. We know this when we are, for example, I'm a mother to a 7-year-old girl, and I'm shifting in and out of these positions in relationship here, you know, where you could, so I will decide something for her that she does not agree on. Is that violence? I mean, if you ask her, maybe she would say that is, I feel harassed now because I'm not allowed to walk the streets alone at night or whatever, swim in the pool without the life vest. So but it's just so that when we look at relationships, I think that it's much more than thinking about violence as something that's objective. I think it's something that we all sort of execute. And so when we're talking, like, you know, being like a violator or being a victim is actions that we all take part in all the time when we are that's part of human life. So I think if the debate starts with that, there will become much more nuances in, you know, where is the boundaries for how much violence you could commit to another person, right? I hope this makes sense, but I think that and in that sense, the reason why I'm saying this is that if we need to sort of minimize violence in the future, and I just totally agree with what Paula is saying, and also Inga, you know, if we want to have less of that, we will have to, you know, start by accepting, you know, that relationships between people have these dynamics, and we, yeah, so that we don't end up in a situation where we will say that some people are violent and some people are not. I think that's not a productive way of talking about this. Yeah, and I also, Paula, I just wanted to comment what you said about the sexual violence. I think that is something that the Me Too movement helped us, was talking about the sexual part of going to work, because now we're past Harvey Weinstein, and we're past you know, lots of media guys lost their jobs, at least in Denmark. But I still think that we need to have a conversation on how this sexuality is part of the professional, I mean, at least in the arts and celebrity business that I'm in, there's a huge sort of driving force in the sexual tensions that are between people. But and we have to talk about this, because, you know, we have to accept that that's part of the human nature. But also talking about, you know, the boundaries are different from people, and if, you know, if I feel harassed by this guy, that is harassment. You know, it is a harassment if I feel it, and that should be respected, right? So that's the kind of conversations we will need to have in the future anymore.
Now, Do the audience have any questions? Raising hands. We were warned that this, like I of course know that, but Elina very nicely warned that our public audience don't have too many questions. So maybe someone wants to change this tradition here. Do we have any questions in web? I don't know who is checking the web. Yeah, you have. Yeah.
I was wondering, so the psychological violence is now illegal in Denmark.
As I
But
understand.
have there been any cases where it has been actually proven?
I don't know if Christina, did you hear that question that as the emotional violence is illegal now in Denmark, are there any cases where people have been sued or committed for emotional violence?
Yes, I think that my film helped create this momentum that was already going on, but I think that the film helped set the agenda in the media, and that resulted in the new law a half a year after the film was out in the cinemas. And actually, the good news was that the parliament was all agreed that this law should be passed. So now we have a separate paragraph about psychological violence, and there has been already cases in the in the law system where people have been judged guilty of psychological violence, and I think I think the purpose of the law, at least for me and others, was not to have a lot of kind of judgments like cases. I mean, that's good that there are cases, but the issue for me with the law was to sort of give the concept prestige in the public debate. But there are cases, and people have been condemned, and that's also good. And I also think that it's good to have a law system that has to make like a job defining what is the psychological violence, because it has to be a pattern that takes place over time. And there are 7 different kind of strategies in psychological violence. So we will look at these like isolation, threatening, surveillance, controlling money, controlling communication, being talked to degradingly in public in front of other people. Looking at these so that we all begin to sort of see what is it that's sort of what is psychological violence. And so that's the much more important thing than having people put in jail or committed in some way. But yes, the answer is yes, people have been committed.
Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that this kind of changes are possible, even though it might take time until they will become real here. Evelyn, you have a question?
Yeah.
We can take the microphone.
I used to not wait.
Okay.
But I have a question. You were saying that it was your childhood trauma, what was you pushing on this way to deal with these things, this violent theme. Where are you on your journey? How are you on that? Are you healing right now, or makes it worse to work with this violent themes and this woman there and this part? Is this do you healing, or it getting worse for you?
Christina, I didn't know if you heard that. This question was for you. But do you, as the documentary came out, it burned out of your own experience. The question was that how are you dealing with your experience? Are you healing, or has it gotten worse after this feedback?
Definitely healing is the short answer. I mean, and this is also just regarding the Me Too movement. I think that speaking up and acknowledging other people speaking up. I mean, one thing is violence, but another thing is sexual harassment, but also other minorities speaking up about like handicapped people or people Inuit from Greenland, or people speaking up about how it felt being having these experiences is just so extremely important, and so I just feel it's so important to back people up when they speak up. You know, that's the way to break the taboo. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think that when there is some certain person coming out with their personal story, it always is much more stronger than anonymous problem in society. Any more questions? Oh, please. Can you use the microphone then?
So it's not kind of a question, it's like a topic, maybe more philosophic topic. So I can't say that I personally agree or disagree with it. I just sort of think about it. So how do you think? Is it also, can we also consider a harassment on a person that don't accept, for example, others' gender? So if we say that it's like complete freedom, and we say that it's a harassment if someone doesn't accept someone's gender. But isn't it also a harassment for this someone who doesn't accept?
So you mean like if it is harassment also for the person who is not accepting the other person's gender?
It seems that we are also forcing them to accept that they don't want to accept.
To force the acceptance? Like I didn't get it this last
So
thing.
if I wouldn't acknowledge you as a woman, then is it harassment if you like force me
To accept myself?
because I don't acknowledge like woman as a gender.
Yeah, I do think maybe it's my limit to not being helpful in overcome this thing. Like I don't see any point in not recognizing the determination of the other person on themselves. Like, so I think it's so easy, like and it's a matter of caring. So you show that you are caring for the other person by recognizing what this other person is telling you to recognize about themselves. So I don't think it's like but maybe it's my limit not to being able to understand this question neither. Yeah, exactly, because from my part it's really clear, like if the other it's a matter of respect. Yeah.
I think it's also a question about like human rights. That you have a right to have your gender, and it's a violation of your human rights if people won't do it. And I think maybe you can compare it to like in being transgender has been a psychiatric illness in Denmark. I think. Now I actually can't remember when it wasn't anymore, but it's like quite recently, and the same with homosexuality. So, and I think like yeah, because I see your point, but I also I'm also just like I don't know why people won't acknowledge somebody's gender. Like I don't see the point either. But I also think it is a question about human rights. So you can't just be like, well, I can't acknowledge you, because we see like categories changing throughout the history, and like in the antique, you just thought like the vagina was a penis that wouldn't have like fallen out yet. So there was just like this one gender system, and then we have like the two gender system. But like, why should this be the end? Like, we can have like various more, I guess, like in the future. Yeah.
But I wanted to tell you, like, to thank you because of the question, because I really do think that many people ask themselves this question. And so to bring up this thing, because it's a matter of like courage and yeah, so thanks.
Christina, do you want to add something? Or
No, because I didn't really hear the question, but so please jump to next question. If I think I like the answers from Paula and Nina. Great answers.
okay, thank you. I think we had one more question. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question.
Can you use the microphone?
I can. Thank you. I'm not sure how to phrase it, but I've been wondering what to do about these men. So I think it's wonderful that we have the Me Too movement and we have art like this coming out that help break taboos and bring about conversations. But at the same time, I wonder if we are not to assume that men are inherently evil, as to commit so much violence onto women, as this is often the direction of the violence in a kind of gender-based violence situation, then we must assume that this is how men are socialized. And while we're doing a lot to break the taboos around women's position, I think at the same time, at least I've read in the Danish media, there's a lot of conversation about how poorly men are doing when we leave the sort of power realm, if you know what I mean. Like, obviously men still have more power, but once they divorce, they're helpless. They don't have many means, or they haven't forged proper social connections, or they don't understand their own feelings. So I wonder if there are any efforts being made, because I think if this situation is to try to not only help the women, because this also make the men who don't quite understand this problem very aggravated, is that how can we help also lift the men out of this position? That was very long.
So as I understand, the problem has, it's not only women's problem, but the social problem. This is what maybe you,
I would like to think that it's not that men are born to commit violence.
So maybe, Christina, would you like to answer?
I think that now I have been working with this whole area for the past maybe 8 years, kind of really actively, and I vote for parties that also fight for men's rights to go to a shelter if they have been battered, right? And also I vote for a party that will also help the men on the street and have men take more of the time with the kids when they're newborn, all this. So when I go to vote, I will vote for everybody's better rights, right? But I still think that there are, I mean, this must be the time where we have to mainstream the female problem. And this is not to say that the problems for all other genders should not be part of that, but I just think that, you know, there are so many problems, and you know, if we have to change stuff, we will just have to kind of be activists in a way where we do not become cynicists towards other groups, right? So I don't know if that answers the question. I just think that there are gender-related problems that are so big that needs to be addressed now. And first, And then I think that, I just wanted to, because Inga and Paula earlier on talked about, the political systems, and one of the thoughts that I had about this was that, for example, like diversity is right now, I think the problem in Denmark is that diversity is seen as a project, so it's like a silo. So now we do a strategy on diversity, and then we will work actively with diversity. But I think that's a totally wrong way of attacking this problem. I mean, diversity should be part of every single silo in projects or in the way we construct or organize society. I mean, so when we have health system, that should be diversity oriented. The economical system should be focusing on diversity. Diversity should be like a superpower that's connecting all the parts of society. Instead of now, it's just like in one ministry they're talking about gender equality. It's like a zoo. We go and watch someone interested in gender stuff. And then we can continue with the normal world over here. And I totally disagree with that way of doing, exercising society. So that was an add-on. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think we also need to separate men and women from the ideas of masculinity, and because it is just in this patriarchal system that we have, we are all losers. It's not like the men are winning or gaining a lot, because they as you said, they get divorced, they end up lonely, and they don't have any friends, and because they can't talk about their feelings and they don't understand themselves, it's pretty rough, but it's just generalized, and it's not like the best situation. And then the women have other problems, and this is again very binary, but I think we have to let loose of and talk about what the roles that we socialize specific people into. And it's a very big project, but I think we also have to dismantle the whole all the things that attached to the patriarchal system, that you have to prioritize wealth and economical growth and all these things. We have to prioritize mental health more, and caregiving and nurturing and all those so I think it's a huge we can't it just cannot
one
be
part of the big problem.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, because all this a lot of in the classical masculine role, there is just a lot of I can't think of the English word, but it's there's a lot of things missing as well, being able to talk about feelings with other people, that's a very common thing.
Paula, would you like to add something very shortly, because the time
no,
is almost up? So.
Just that I agree. So I do think also that people who identify as men experience this violence also, it's gender violence based on gender. So it's also affecting people who identify as men, and in this in a different way. Yeah, of course. But it is like this. It's just that probably it's not that perceived in the society, in the mainstream society, but it's happening, and it's it's just not maybe so much recognized as women violence, for example, but is affecting everybody. Yeah.
It has been very exciting talk, and I'm sorry to interrupt it, but we have to end because the time is up. And I would like to thank you for participating. And Christina, I'm sorry that the beginning was so difficult, but I'm very happy that all worked well, fine in the end. And
And who were watching us and online, thank you. I think there were 2 people. And yeah, now I say goodbye to Christina. So yeah, thank you again.
Thanks.
And one other information is this exhibition will be here in Kogo Gallery until the 19th of November. And after that, it travels again, but just a few kilometers to the center of Tartu, in Tartu University College of Foreign Languages and Cultures, where it will be open from 22nd of November to 6th of December. So this is all the information I have. But now I would like to end this event and invite all the audience to join the wine table, and we can continue the discussion in not so official form. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks. I didn't expect that long.